Welcome to Consciously Inspired Minds, where we ditch the default and live life by design. I'm your host, Brandy White, personal growth enthusiast, entrepreneur, and lifestyle coach. I host conversations with creators, entrepreneurs, healers, and educators committed to living a life of truth, intention, and connection. Understanding how to discover their inner vision to design their outer world. Our guests take us on a journey of what it means to embody a life of conscious inspiration, joy, impact, and service. Get ready to be inspired. Welcome to Consciously Inspired Minds. I have an amazing guest on today, my friend, Holli Whitney. And I actually got to know Holli at the yoga studio. So she's a yoga instructor and amongst many other things. But where I really wanted to be in today's interview is all around humor as our medicine. And I was just telling Holli before we started to record today, Holli can make me laugh and cry all in the same 60 minutes. So I'm sure she is going to share all of her magic with us today. And I'm excited to do a formal introduction. But first, just wanted to bring Holli in. Hey, Holli, how are you?
Hey, so excited to be here. So glad we could make it happen.
I know. Yeah. So this has been in the making for months, just trying to coordinate schedules. And I mean, life happens, right? Kids, work, all of it. So this is certainly a treat today. Okay. So I want to introduce you to Holli. So meet Holli Whitney, a radiant soul with a heart that embraces both laughter and compassion. As a trained counselor, former middle school educator, and yoga instructor, Holli has dedicated her life to helping others find balance and well-being. Her genuine warmth and empathetic nature offers others permission to nourish their own healing and growth. Beyond her professional roles, Holli is a devoted mother of 3, navigating the exhilarating challenges of raising a trio of truly dynamic individuals. Her oldest are energetic teenage boys, keeping her on her toes with their ever-changing interests and boundless appetites. I'm sure our listeners can relate to that. Her youngest is the daughter she wished she could have been. Holli approaches motherhood with a delightful blend of wisdom and humor, creating a home that echoes with intention, confidence, love, and laughter. In addition to her roles as a counselor and mom, Holli is a valued member of the University of Cincinnati community, where she works full-time. Her dedication to her career reflects her commitment to fostering positive change within the academic setting as she advocates for the student experience. Her colleagues admire her for the warmth and authenticity she brings to the workplace. Whether guiding students through life's uncertainties, leading a yoga class with serenity and grit, or managing the whirlwind of kid energy at home, Holli strives for balance and inspiration as she shares her heartfelt sincerity and infectious humor. Her journey is not unique, but rather a testament to the beautiful dance of roles we are all trying to gracefully navigate, hoping we leave moments a little better than we found them. I get chills reading that introduction. I don't know. It's like, okay, we're done here. So Holli, where I like to start is, can you tell us a little bit about your childhood and little Holli and how that impacted who you are and where you are today?
I love to start here with that place in mind and heart, because I think it really does inform our future self, right? And the paths we choose to take are the ones that we veer off on accidentally. But I grew up in a village, a very small community on a dirt road, and my driveway was about a half a mile long off of that dirt road. So it was very much a childhood of entertaining myself with my dog. My very best friend and my closest neighbor was my great grandma. She lived down the hill and we called her Grandma Down the Hill. I had a pond. I had a little rowboat that had a hole in it. I had hills and trees and grass and complete darkness at night and total silence except for the frogs, maybe, or the crickets. So I grew up in a place when, in life, when you hear that expression, go to your happy place, go to your happy place. That's in my mind where I go, whether it was in the fall and the leaves were changing and there were those sounds and expressions of nature, or whether it was in the winter and I could lie down in the middle of the field in the snow and feel complete silence, but like hear the wind as it, came down the hill and through the trees. I think that was probably something that most kids my age weren't necessarily paying attention to, but because I was surrounded by that and that was my entertainment, it was my adventure, it was my friend, I hear it and I see it wherever I go, whether it's in a big city or in some of the incredible places that my husband and I have been able to live and share with our kids. That's the part of my childhood that is, my foundation. And I grew up with several aunts and uncles, cousins everywhere, really extended farming family. So we worked hard. We ate well. There was tons of potatoes and butter. And I mean, they all ate the meat. That's a whole nother story, but there was that too.
Yeah.
And vitamin D milk, whole milk. Like, who would have thought? These are the things we were raised on. And I
I
have one
love
older
it.
brother. And really, if there's an opposite
Okay.
person on the planet, to me, it is my brother. We're,
Really.
less than 2 years apart. And in every single way, we are so different.
I love that so much. And I think that really speaks to your ability to tap into that serenity that you talk about. What I'm really curious to know is how you tap into that anywhere you go. So you just mentioned the different places that you and your husband have lived. How has that experience trained your body to seek that out wherever you are? Because I think that could be medicine for all of us as well. Like, what are some of those tools to reground us?
It's such a good question. And, I feel like we're kind of wired to miss moments, if that
Yeah,
makes sense. And
it
I think
does.
it's an exercise of training your brain and your body to see the moments when you're in them, to feel them, whether it's a little breeze across your face or you're feeling a sun on your body or you're hearing something. The nature sounds are something I'm always tuned into, maybe because of my upbringing and my brain is just sort of wired in that way. But I think that if we can exercise noticing, we're all going to be able to find it. Whatever that nature is that we need, I think we'll be able to find it. My husband and I moved to Honolulu, Hawaii when we were married for a month, 3 weeks. And then we packed up and we moved across. We got to the furthest place you could get almost and still be in the United States, fresh out of college. And we moved to this island. And I remember being like, it's really pretty, but also like, where are the evergreens? Where are the oaks?
Mm,
Where are the maples? And then in kind of assimilating, I then realized I was smelling plumeria and sea breeze. And I was hearing different sounds, whether it's light rain every day, we called liquid sunshine, because it would rain like a mist almost every day, and there would be a rainbow somewhere. Then training myself to see and feel the liquid sunshine, right? And to know that I was absorbing it as part of this unique moment that most people dream of, going there and
mhm.
spending a week or two, and even kind of swallowing down the home. I was very homesick and I felt very isolated and alone and very different from everyone
Mm,
around me. And so that took a lot of work. It took a lot of real grit to be in that environment that is everyone's paradise and have permission to feel sad and sometimes cry because you are so far away from everything familiar. And I think that when we can allow ourselves to thrash about in that space, it calms it. It's that expression we say with our teens, if you can name it, you can tame it. Being
Mhm.
able to say, I'm so fortunate for this moment, but I also feel a little homesick for Northern Michigan, gave me permission to move through that feeling tunnel and then emerged in a way where when we left, I felt completely heartbroken to leave that island
Right.
and the people, the ohana, the love that we had built for 8 years in being there.
Mm.
But it was different. It was a different form of nature. I think that that's just an example of how wherever you go, there you are. And if we can
Oh
look
my gosh, I
around
just
and
wrote that down, Holly. I
you
literally
did.
just wrote that down. Wherever you go, there you are. That's so funny. Wow, that's not a coincidence. That's not a coincidence.
It's true.
So true.
It's so true.
Yeah, amazing. So I know you've mentioned even in class your experience in Hawaii. And so I know that's been a big part of your life. And then also getting back to the humor piece. Your ability, as I said at the top, for you to make me cry and laugh in the same 60 minutes. It's like so magical. I mean, I walk out of Holly's yoga class feeling like a completely different woman. And I'm sure most of us do. Her classes are always so packed and everybody's so excited for Holly. It's certainly a treat of our week. So that's where I want to be for a second. How and where you get your sense of humor. Can you connect the dots there? Where does that come
Oh,
from?
gosh. I think honestly, just life experiences, training. I've always, I think, been kind of sarcasm lives in me deeply. It feels at home. And there's something really, there's a recipe out there for taking that sarcasm and keeping it light and fun and funny versus dark and dreary. So I'm sure at other parts of my life, or even maybe throughout the day, it might feel like that for me, where the sarcasm takes over a little bit. But I think people who are drawn to working with adolescents in general, which those are my people, I think you have to be wired for a special sense of humor and a real kind of
Mhm.
blunt honesty. That's what we can always get
Mm.
from our teens, right?
Yeah, yeah. And I would say that that's a perfect example because you are very much in your humor, but you're also very much in your authority. So that
Yeah.
I trust you. I trust you 100% when I'm on my mat. I trust everything we're doing. And I'm just fully able to surrender. And so it's again, I mean, we're going to unpack all of these benefits of being on your mat and all of the gifts that you bring to class, but also lessons for life because it's really a time on our mats translates to life because for me, it gives me opportunity to also release some inhibitions. And as you had said too, giving us permission to do that.
Yeah.
And I guess similarly to your experience in your childhood growing up and just being present and in the now and all of your senses kind of flooding in, I could say the same for being on my mat because there are moments in my life where I feel on my mat and in the studio is the only place I feel the most confident and the most safe. Isn't
Mhm.
that funny?
I think it's extraordinary. Well done.
It is extraordinary. Yeah. And it maybe didn't start there,
Right. Of course not.
but as I started to embody the practice more and doing things outside of the studio as well, just having a
Hmm.
healthier balance, which is something that you talk a lot about, is creating that sense of well-being and that balance. I was seeing some words throughout when I was doing some research before our call today and it was balance, it was compassion, it was sincerity and humor. All of those things like it just makes me want to exhale. What a
Yeah.
recipe for well-being. Where I suppose when you mention this wisdom and this humor, why are those two things important to you?
Well, I think the wisdom piece comes from, and I don't think I touched on this with your previous question. I think as a child, I was a very serious feeler. Like I connected with
Mm,
things deeply, still do. I would laugh. I was joyful. I could be any of those roles. But I think at the core of it all, I was deeply, deeply sensitive to the experience of other people around me or animals or
yeah.
leaves floating on the pond or whatever it was. And perhaps out of just deference to life and what life does to humans, I've been able to sharpen it up a bit so it's not a tragic connection of feeling. It's more of an honest sort of reflection of that being's experience, and how can we sit in it and be messy and smile about it and know that we'll come out a little bit different on the other end with different tools. Before that question that you just asked, and you'll have to remind me of what you just asked, because I want to go back to something
I
that you
will.
just said, and it's
Please.
about
Yeah. Yeah.
trust. You mentioned
Mm,
that when you walk into the room, you're able to be in a place where you trust me completely from something to tail. What'd you say? From wing to tail? Anyway, it was a great expression. And I would just like to point out though, that truly is the nicest thing you can say to a human. I think, thank you. But also I think you're forgetting the piece that is about you, which is there's no way you could lend me trust and vulnerability in that way if you did not trust your own self in that space.
mm,
So our mats are
mm,
how long and they're how wide, right? When you're on there,
right.
your brain, you've signaled, you've created memories and a journey it lives in your body and your mind and your breath and your spirit. And maybe it's just where you feel confident, strong, comfortable. And because you trust yourself fully, you know how you're moving in space and time. It took you a while to get there in your practice. It didn't start out that way. Because of that, I think in the purest sense, you and maybe other students lend that trust to me and think it's about me. And really, it's not. It's a testament to you and where you've
Yeah.
been and what you've had the patience to sit in and feel bad at, right? Or you've had
Mm,
the ability to fall on your face and, be messy and come through and stick with it. That's the grit,
right.
that's and what better place to laugh when you feel safe and you feel like you're fulfilled and you're seen.
Yes. And I think that has a lot to do with it too. That's such a beautiful call out. So thank you. It's as though, and I'm sure a lot of people can relate to this, it's as though it almost feels home to me being on my mat. It feels sometimes the most authentically expressive as I can be, maybe in that time of my life or in that week,
Yeah.
day, or
Mm,
really an invitation when I walk through those doors to just release, let go, feel good,
yep.
not be so caught up in my analytical mind, like we were talking about, just kind of going through the motions of the day. So,
Yeah.
so let's talk a little bit about your work, your counseling work as well, and how this really ties in to the yoga practice. Because, Holly, there are times when, and I've done a lot of healing, personal work, personal development. I'm a coach, so this is where I love to be. And some of the words that you share with us, I was like, oh, that it's so there's so much depth to it. So I'm really curious to know more about your work and what led you there, and a formal middle school educator. So tell us a little bit about that.
I think that if I just always knew I was going to be a teacher, right? I would line my dolls
Mm,
up or my dog and put them in rows and teach them how to spell Mississippi. I'd read books to them. I would, make them do homework. And that was what I spent a lot of time doing as a kid out in the middle of nowhere and entertaining myself. But what I found in being in the classroom is that there were kids out there who needed tools and they would come to me. And I think just in the wild now in life, people will tell me things, people I don't know, and it may be a brief interaction. And I gather information, they share, like they hold that space with me. And I'm so grateful for that. I don't think that everyone has that skill or approachability.
Right.
But it was twofold. I
Right.
wanted to be able to help in the right way, but there was a part of me, I think intrinsically, that also needed to know how to keep myself safe in that way. Because when you're holding things for people, it can become overwhelming. It can become sad. It can become heavy. And
Mhm.
even the joyful things that you hold for people, it needs to be more holding with them, kind of transitioning it to them to navigate. And so
Mhm.
I started my master's work when I was a middle school. I was a seventh and eighth grade language arts world geography teacher. So I started doing the master's work and then learned, that there were a lot of principles, there were a lot of theories, philosophies, techniques. And I always just felt most at home when I relied on my instinct to dig deeper or lighten it up or whatever. But then I had the background and the confidence, like we're talking about on your mat. You go to that place, you feel like you're confident, you know how to operate, you know where your mind and your body are at all times. I wouldn't say that I'm an expert in that way at all in counseling, but I think in terms of human behavior and human interaction, I feel most often very fulfilled and very
Mm.
good. And while I'm not formally practicing any counseling now, I'm always learning and reading and trying to do better myself and trying to know how to develop tools for things that we're not even sure are coming yet. Whether it's
Right.
fallout from COVID, long haul COVID, whether it's just a vacuum of teens growing through that pandemic and the impact there, whether it's addiction to instant gratification via social media and how that's shaping our teen brains and our young adult brains, and how are they going to live fulfilled lives, and what are we going to do?
Mm.
How do we reach them and stay grounded ourselves? All of these things are very interesting to me. Brain wiring, brain development, the brain as a muscle is something. I had the opportunity to teach cognitive psychology as an adjunct professor. And it was in some ways way over my head because it was very physiological and it was very sort of scientific, but also it illustrates, of course, what we know, which is we have to work hard to wire our brains in certain ways. We can't just revert
Yes.
to factory settings and assume we're going to be able to do
Right.
okay out there in the wild, you know?
Yeah. And I just want folks to know, I almost want to take a pause here and make this really important point that it's never a place where it's like, you have reached your destination. It's not that. Like, you feel like maybe you've reached your destination. You're like, I've done it. But no, no, no.
Yeah.
Then something else comes up, and then it's like, oh,
Yeah.
okay, this
Mm-hmm.
this is a pattern. I'm seeing this more and more, or wherever, whatever phase of life we're in, or whatever sort of interests are bubbling up, or whatever sort of
Mm-hmm.
relationships are coming in and out of our lives will kind of mirror back to us the work we have to do,
Oh,
the
yeah.
work that's calling us to do. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
I've recently had another revelation, and I've spent the last 5 years in deep growth and expansion and reflection, and have just recently encountered something, gosh, that was pretty hidden and locked. And now I'm like, wow, I've got some work to do here. And
Mm-hmm.
it's not easy, that's for
Oh,
sure.
right.
But just to remain sort of to your point, like being compassionate and really curious about it and giving ourselves grace, putting
Mm-hmm.
yourself in situations and around people and places that really nurture your soul, I think is really key. And putting people around you that
Mm-hmm.
really support you in really positive ways. And I think you're one of those people for me in my yoga practice that just really creates that safe space for me. But I love it. So, talk about more how you're advocating a positive experience for students and what your work is there and how that's lighting you up right now.
Well, I've always worked, and sometimes I've worked several different jobs, taught full time, got a master's degree, had a job at a salon, all concurrently. And then I started
Yeah.
having kids. And, your free time or how you choose to spend your time outside of your career, it looks a little different. And
Yes,
then
it
I
does.
had the opportunity to, right, that's the way to put it. I
Mm,
had a
right.
chance when I had my third. So my husband and I made a move from Sarasota, Florida, up here to Cincinnati to be closer to family. And we'd never had an opportunity to live necessarily next to a sister or a brother or whatever, raise our kids with cousins. And so that was something we took an opportunity from a really tumultuous place that we were in professionally, personally, to change our lives, right? My husband and I basically picked up, sold our house and moved to a place where we didn't necessarily have anything lined up, but there was something calling us to do that for the sake of our own balance and health, authenticity, and our kids. So in doing that, I kind of left the career and the profession that I had nurtured and grown and built and stayed home with Margot until she was in kindergarten, but then fun thing, kindergarten was COVID kindergarten. So was actually home with her until she was in first grade. And I feel like I'm a good mom most days, but I know I am a great employee. And I feel like there's women out there, there's moms out there that may share that in their hearts. Parenting is so hard and dynamic, and it can feel difficult to catch a breath and make the right choice. And it can, you're juggling your own emotions, you're fighting for your own balance and authenticity, but then you've got the needs of 3 distinct and individual people that you're growing and modeling for. And you can go to work and it's almost the easiest part, right? So I can go to work, I can feel good at it. I know I'm good at it. And I can say that without a doubt. And every day that I leave my job working for student success, which means sometimes getting a faculty to understand a student's question or a department to understand why a student made the choices they did to drop their class or withdraw from their class or whatever the case is that disrupts the student life cycle. And advocating for the student experience, using the skills of understanding how to meet students where they are, understand their process, and then facilitate whatever support needs to happen to help shore them up. In contrast, being at home, you've got your partner, you've got your kids, you might have family around, you might have close friends. But in the truth of it is that there's very little that you do get to control at home.
Right.
You've got kids' schedules, you've got doctor's appointments, checkups, you've got to go to Walgreens and wait there for an hour and a half for a simple prescription, like weekly. It's just the time that can be taken to just get through a day advocating in your home can feel like you're just not winning, that you're like, you're okay, but you're not great at it. And I think that's where I struggle as a mom, as a human, as a wife, as a sister, as a friend, is truly feeling like I leave work and I save something for here, save something for home, because I want that version to advocate and redirect and show endless patience, and be creative. And I'm getting better at figuring out how to pilfer and save that version and get home and still have it. But gosh, shout out if you're working inside the home or outside of the home. It doesn't really matter. There's a domestic load that women carry. And part of that goes to wiring of the brain. Part of that goes to societal constructs. And we go to work and we do the things and we shine bright and we come home and maybe we're dull and scratchy. Mascara just running down my face like I was just in a battle.
Yes. I can relate to everything you just said. And I was on a call with my coach actually yesterday. And one of the things that she said to me was, and it gets me choked up just saying it, but is being a mother is one of the most important things in life you could ever do. And I think so quickly we can attach our worth to our work, which is something I have done my entire life. And so then when I became a mom, that's when shit hit the fan. I'm like, oh, wow, I can't see the person I once was and raised woman's like,
Oh,
you know?
yeah.
And so that's when the work, like the real work everywhere began, inside and outside of myself. And so when she said that to me, it just sort of brought ease into my body.
Mm.
Like, yes,
Oh, yeah.
so true. And it got me off the focus of starting this entrepreneurial journey that I'm on. And I've just been in this sort of a lot of doing.
Yeah.
And I'm
Yeah.
aware, and it's like, okay, I've been doing a lot of doing. I need to balance it with some self care,
Mm.
with some good family time. But it
Yeah.
was having someone say that to me was like, yes, it absolutely is
Mm.
the most important work we could do. And it is a lot of work. And I hear so many women say who are working outside of the home, it's, gosh, I feel like I don't have anything left. Like my family's getting the leftovers of me at the end of the day. And it can really feel that way. What are some of the things, like you said, that you're learning how to save that version of you after work coming home? What are some things that you can share with us that have really helped you build that awareness or build that muscle and building, as you said, that intention and confidence and love and laughter in the house? It's like we all want more of that.
Oh, yeah. Well, number one, I think everyone should have a counselor in their life always. And finding the right fit takes
Yeah.
years and years and years and years.
Mm.
But everyone deserves a space to go to sit and be able to share their experience without any judgment, without any interruption. Because once we can do that, it's amazing how, like you said, being given permission and hearing that being a mom is the most important thing you'll ever do, right? It's your biggest job, and you feel your shoulders relax and you feel it kind of wash off. For me, counseling has always been that place for me. I didn't have it as a
Mm.
child or even a teen, but in college started going, and I know my path has been different because of it, because of the work that I've done in there. And it's also helped me be more aware of patterns that I have or habits. But I think it coincides with just an understanding of our wiring and our work to do. So one thing I do is every morning when I have to work on campus, which means leaving here, right? I can't make progress on laundry throughout the day. I can't meal prep throughout the day. I'm physically somewhere else. I have to stay in my brain before my feet hit the ground. Today is going to be a great day. I have the energy I need for today. Because the reality is
Yeah.
our subconscious mind
Mm.
is listening. And the subconscious
Mhm.
mind, it's subconscious, right? It's like the background noise that we're not even fully sure is happening, but it is, and it's usually negative.
Right.
And so I have to remind myself that it's going to be a good day and that I feel rested and that I feel energized. It may not be true. I may have had a horrible night's sleep, right? But that has to be my mindset before the feet hit the ground. I do know that it makes a difference. The other rule I have for myself in terms of balance and just morale is that I never say fuck before 10 a.m. if I can help it. Because if I do,
That's a
it's like,
really good tip.
it's just,
Yes.
get it out, keep it out of your mouth until 10. And then you stand a chance not in using it in every single sentence, even if it's just for fun. So, but again, because I think our language does kind of color how we see the world and how it sees us, of course.
Ooh,
So I try
words
to be
matter,
mindful of that.
ladies. Words matter.
They
Yes.
they do.
Mm.
And the words we
Yeah.
say out loud and the words, most importantly, that we say, to ourselves inside our brains.
Yes.
But I think I just try to be really conscious. I know I have a limited amount of energy. I know that at the end of the day, my scale has to change for what I expect of myself. I know that I have to modulate energy throughout the day to get to those points because there are certain things that have to happen, right? Like soccer carpool or the tournament game or the cookies for the concession stand or the birthday bags. The list goes on and on. So there are some things that just
Mhm.
have to happen. I try to be mindful of the things that have to happen and the things that maybe aren't tied to an external thing that also have to happen. Like Margot's going to need a certain amount of time to tell me stories for me to look
Right.
at her with my eyeballs and be
Yes.
excited and listen and feel with her.
Hmm.
My middle child is going to try to escape to his bedroom as soon as he gets home, and pulling him out and knowing that every day my husband and I have to check each other. Like, did you pull him out? Did he just disappear today? What do we need to do? How can we do it? And then our
Right.
oldest, it's just, gosh, he's moments away from leaving and going to college and being in all of those opportunities where it's the last marching band performance, or it's the last theater performance, or it's the last, time we'll send him with a permission slip to school or whatever. So when you look at all of that in a day, it's no wonder we're tired. And it's no wonder at the end, by like 9 o'clock, my brain is just like a pile of cotton candy whirling in a machine, thread barely connecting. It's not crunchy. It's light. Probably smells amazing, but there's not a whole lot happening after 9 o'clock in my brain. So I think the other thing I try to keep in mind, Brandy, is, and I'm not as good at this yet, but just asking myself, like, what are you robbing yourself from in the future? So for example, when you have limited energy physically in your body, emotionally, spiritually, you have limited energy, and there are certain places it all has to go. What I mean by being careful not to rob myself is I love nothing more than to have a glass of red wine that is like the size of a mixing bowl and sip it at night. But in reality, doing that, it can serve a purpose here and there, but it can also rob me from good rest in the night. It
Yeah.
can rob me
Yeah.
from a mindset the next morning that I need to have to go do something difficult in my job or at home. It can rob me of my body. It can make things ache that don't normally ache when everything is
Yeah.
aching. So nonetheless, it's just it's an awareness of, am I doing something right now that fuels me or robs me? Yeah.
Taking inventory on and what's really serving us or what's not. For me,
Yeah.
it was I quit drinking alcohol 2 years ago. And
Yeah.
no judgment to those who drink alcohol. Like, beautiful, great.
Right.
For me, though, for me personally, it was robbing me of so many things that were lighting me up. Like, I love early
Yeah.
mornings. I love going to an early yoga class. And so also I was on the heels of this entrepreneurial journey and knew that things were going to be coming into my orbit that I really needed a lot of focus, attention, energy, emotional endurance for, bandwidth. And I'm calling these things in, Holly. I'm calling them in. And my thought process around that was, well, there's glaring reasons as to why this isn't serving me, but also how am I aligning myself with the things that I'm really desiring in my life? Like, what are we doing? What can we what can we be personally accountable for? Like, let's get like really honest with ourselves. And where are we numbing ourselves, whether that be
Oh,
with
yeah.
alcohol or with social media, and how can we be using
Yeah.
that time differently? So I love that you just,
Absolutely.
yeah, what's fueling you and what's robbing you, because so many times also we're like, we don't have the time to do these things. I don't have the time to explore what inspires me. I don't have the time to
Yeah.
take that course, right? And it's like, is that true? Could it be true that I do have the time? I just need to take the inventory and
Yeah.
prioritize.
Oh, for sure. For sure. I think that is a skill that I hope my kids have been raised with at least the language for. Is this serving me or others I love? And
Right.
cognitively, kids, teens, they're really not necessarily set up to make those choices or decisions all the time consistently. But I think if there is at least tracks laid, the hope is that in the future, instead of grabbing for Xbox controller, there might be a little voice subconsciously even that says maybe a walk, right? Or instead of grabbing for a crinkly packaged snack, maybe a banana or an apple or whatever. And I think that's a whole nother part of it, Brandy, is just we can know what fuels us. We can know what robs us. It takes a lot of work to come up with those things, and it takes a lot of energy to pursue them. I think nutrition, I really have no, I'm not great at getting the protein I need. I don't eat meat. I'm not great at getting iron, down the chute. I realize that I know the formula. Why am I so resistant to it? Like, I don't know. Still haven't figured that out. But what I will say is, as a feisty newlywed, when Nick and I got married, we were fresh out of undergrad. And so we were 22 and 23. And I would try to get dramatic and pick fights with him just over various things. Who even knows? I get really feisty and want to argue. And he would say, okay, no, this is so important. And I really want to dig in on this. And we're going to talk about all of the things and we're just going to have it out. Right. But first, let's just have a banana and a glass of water. And then I'm going to set my watch and then that's it. You're going to tell me all your feelings and we're going to.
Wow.
And I'd be like, okay, but I'm coming for you. Right. And it was over nothing. It was probably something stupid. Right. And
of course,
we would drink a glass of water. We'd have a banana. And what do you know? It just didn't seem as fiery. It just didn't seem as relevant. Maybe it just didn't seem as urgent, even though a topic may have signaled that it needed some discussion. The banana and the glass of water could definitely help set it on a course that wasn't maybe as bombastic or as emotionally charged, and good could come of it, right? So when we look at balance and we look at, how we're fighting through our days, I do think often about the banana and the glass of water, and I always am very hydrated. But I think taking an inventory of, am I tired? Am I hungry? Have I had any water? Just a quick pat down of where you are physically can sometimes change the outcome of how you would approach something completely, right?
Yes. And that's so unusual. So that sort of pat down, as you say, can be so far outside of how we're used to functioning and operating that we really have to do it within the conscious mind. Because like you said, I mean, what's the statistic, Holly? Like 95 to 97% of all things we do during our day are run by the subconscious mind.
Oh,
so ladies, we are operating from 3 to 5% of our conscious mind on autopilot.
I know.
So how can we start that disruption? How can we, maybe if anything, out of today's podcast, write down some things that have really piqued your curiosity and like, ooh, hey, I love that banana and water idea. I'm really curious where your husband got that idea from. My husband would never say something like that, but I love it. So it's like just causing that disruption and knowing that when you are making those conscious choices, it's not easy, but it's like, how can we just start to get out of our comfort zone a little bit?
Yeah.
It's got to start somewhere. It's got to start somewhere.
Oh, yeah. And I think it starts, literally by us just saying, wait, do I choose this right now? Something leading to this. I used to rage vacuum my house. I love seeing vacuum cleaner marks in my carpet, even though the rest of the house may be total chaos. Love it. But what I had to teach myself is I'm lugging around this massive like Dyson that could suck your soul out, right? They're so powerful, just like vacuuming like crazy. And then before I know it, my brain is like starting to, right? Because there's blood flow, we're moving. It's maybe my heart rate increases. So it's mimicking in some ways irritation. And then my mindset would be like, I'm the only one who ever does anything around here. Look at this. Can we not put our shoes where they need to go? Why is this here? Right. And then you get in the loop because your brain, fires together, wires together. So if you have a history of just ruminating or anxiety, those pathways are comfortable. Those thought patterns are comfortable. So I'm running the sweeper. And every time I'd get done, even though I'm doing it because it brings me joy to see vacuum cleaner marks and it makes me feel good, the result actually was that I would leave it irritated. And then I would, potentially lash out internally at myself because then I look around and I'm like, why, look at all this. There's stuff everywhere. Or I'd get snotty with somebody in my family. So it's taking that moment and being like, wait, do I choose this right now? Because I feel like I'm irritated, but why? Do I water, blah, 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 and go through the inventory. Sometimes that's enough, that whole exercise to short circuit it. or bring some lightness to it or make me laugh at myself. But it's work and it takes bandwidth. And I think,
Right.
like you mentioned, that's the domestic load. It's not just doing the laundry. It's, do I need to go to the store and get more soap, laundry soap? Did I pay the water bill? Should I put it on auto pay? If I put it on auto pay, when will it pay out? When is this, click cart coming? I need to get special laundry soap because I think he's got a rash and maybe it's because of this. And then, but we're going out of town, so it should be a smaller container. Do I have a container? And the loop. And within that, you're then like, gosh, I got to go to work in a couple of hours. And I got a big meeting. And I got to stand in front of people and use words. And I hope they're not swear words. I really do. But
no fucks before 10.
No fucks before 10. No way.
Yes. I love everything that you're saying right now. This idea around that was recently brought to my attention was like creating a list of pleasures. So where can we introduce more pleasure into our lives? And it doesn't have to be spending a weekend away. It doesn't have to be expensive spa treatments. And I can tell you personally, as I was just like writing down like 5 to 10 things, was during the holidays. My girls have Alexas in their bedrooms. And during the holidays, when I would get them up in the morning, I would turn on Alexa, holiday music, right? Some fun Christmas song.
Okay.
Yeah. It wasn't like anything.
I thought you were going somewhere else with this. Okay.
No, this was a kind gesture. And so I'm turning on the Christmas music and I'm getting them in the mood, and that brought me pleasure because it was like getting them up and making them feel excited for the day and the holidays. And then after the holiday, I stopped doing that. Well, why did I stop doing that? Let's music. Like we love playing music in our house. We play music while we're making dinner and both me and my girls will dance in the kitchen, things like that.
Absolutely.
Stuff starts to fall off. I'm like, well, why aren't we still doing these things? We haven't done this in months. Let's bring this back.
Totally.
And so just simple things like that. But then also a personal one for me was this past weekend, it was Saturday. My daughter had somewhere to be later on in the day. And we're kind of like in between events and you don't know what to do with yourself. You can't do, you don't have enough time. And I'm like, I am just going to go wash off the day. And I said to myself, I'm going to go get a shower. I made it upstairs. I'm like, no. I'm going to get a bath and I'm going to light a candle for my bath and I'm going to put on some soothing music for my bath. And everybody was okay. I took a bath uninterrupted for like 45 minutes, an hour. And everybody was okay. Yeah. Cause I think we get in our minds too. It's like, well, I don't want to pawn it off on my partner. Or I don't want, the kids are going to start fighting and whatever. But everything was okay. And it was like, and then I felt so much more energized and I had so much more capacity for the balance of the day. So
Right. You see it different.
Exactly. It's how can we just kind of sprinkle some of these things in? Yeah. Back to creating more intention and confidence and love and laughter. And this is actually something I want to pick your brain about in the last few minutes here is intention. And how we bring more intention to our day. And maybe this goes back to what you said around, okay, I wake up in the morning and I tell myself that today's going to be a great day. This day's going to serve me. Are there any other things? Because I think as women, we're like, wow, we just got through a robust day and we're coming home, just giving the rest of whatever we have left. And then it's just like, wow, I just let this day take control of me. And I had no intentionality about how I really wanted to spend my time or spend my day or how I wanted to feel, where I wanted to be. Any tips there or words of wisdom?
I think that it all has to start from a place of awareness. I think it takes a lot of courage and it takes a lot of insight and a lot of tools to be happy in your life and still look with curiosity to see where it can be improved. And I think, the difference between a really glorious day and a devastating day are made up of moments. I don't think that there's any day where it's just 100% a wash, right? Because there's always a moment if we can see it. And I think that we will see what we look for. And I'm not saying it in a delusional kind of Pollyanna, everything is roses all the time way. But if we are wired to look for, and I say this in yoga all the time, if you are wired to think the world is out to get you, it will get you, right? And if
Mm,
you're wired to see small moments of triumph in yourself, in your kids, in your husband or wife or your partner, you're going to see them. So we know in the brain that fear and excitement, for example, share the same spot in the brain. And when you're a
mhm,
child, you're growing up, your emotions can misfire for lots of different reasons. But one that we tell our kids is like, oh, stop, pause, check in. Is this a fear or an excitement moment? Because
mhm.
if you don't have the words to unpack it, it can be an exciting thing can turn into a fearful thing. I think that the more meta cognitive work we can do to pause and train ourselves to be like, even for a second, that pause, even for a second, it's changing the way that our brain fires. And I think that we're creatures of habit and routine. The moment you were like, I'm not going to shower, I'm going to take a bath, and I'm going to put on some music and a candle. That was shifting the course of your reality in that moment, right?
And it took effort. I had to convince myself, like I had to be aware, like, no, I'm doing this. And it felt a little uneasy. It didn't feel comfy as I was,
Right.
but once I was in and I was there and I was like, oh yes,
Yeah.
this is what I needed. This is what my body needed.
And imagine the experience for your brain knowing that it's simulating that yoga mat. I trust myself to make good decisions for myself. I trust
Yes.
myself to
Yes.
know when I need a moment or a deep breath,
Hmm.
or
Hmm.
I trust myself to confidently move through this evening. If we can do that along with ourselves, bringing all the different versions, our clumsy self, our best self, our truck driver mouth self, our critical self, our happy self, our confident self, we can bring them all together and just be like, yeah, you know what? It takes all of these versions to be where we are right now, but we're going to need each of those versions to get us out of something someday and maybe get us on a better path. Like if you don't have any
Right.
grit,
Yes.
right? It can be really hard to dig deep when you have to, if you have no experience of
Right.
having done that.
I think that's a great point. Just those different parts of ourselves and how
Yeah.
they have served us, will continue to serve us, how they have kept us safe, how they have kept us stuck 100%. So back to what's fueling me and what's robbing me and being aware of that and taking
Yeah.
inventory. Okay, so back to humor. I'm really like, I love, and listen, I was just saying, it was Sunday. I went out with my sister in law and my soon to be niece, and we went wedding dress shopping. And it was
Oh,
me, them two, and another woman. So it was a day of like calm connection and beauty. And I came home feeling, and we laughed. We just laughed so much. I laughed so much. And it was medicine for my soul that day. And I came home and I'm just like, this is great. And I'm like, I love being around funny people. I love laughter. And there's nothing better to those things combined with being in the presence of other women who just get it
yeah.
and get you. And
Yeah.
so it's so enriching. How do you, and maybe it's something you don't really think about because it comes so naturally to you, but how do you tap into the humor? Are you doing that in your conscious awareness sometimes, or is
Good
it just
question.
kind of flows through you?
I think, yeah. I mean, I think it definitely is shaped. My husband's hilarious. He's very, very dry. My
Yeah.
oldest son is so funny, but I've told him like the world's not ready for you yet. You may be
Yeah.
frustrated with your
Yeah.
like peer groups until you're about 26 or so. And then they're going to start like listening for your comments because they'll realize by then they're coming and they land different. But I think I love to laugh. I love to hear laughter. I don't know that I always feel the most at home in the expectation of laughter, but when things move me in that way, it's extraordinary. I mean, sometimes I'll go to the high school plays, and I did miss one play in my son's whole history of theater. I was out of town. I had a something I couldn't miss. I couldn't be at his opening night. And he said to me, it's almost like when you laugh, it gives people permission to laugh. And it was a
Hmm.
serious play. And he said it just hit different. And I was like, oh no, but what if it's not funny? What do you need from me? Like, I can't, sometimes I find myself laughing when it's not appropriate too. It's like,
Got it. Yeah.
but I love to find joy and I love to find humor. And if you can take like a middle school, like an adolescent boy humor, sometimes very vulgar and horrifying, and then sprinkle it with some just good old fashioned like wit and informativeness. I think that's my formula, I guess. But in yoga, the stream of consciousness flows. And a lot of stuff I draw from that I think people connect with me about is just the human experience where I've ended up in a
Right.
situation that I felt really out of place in, or when I was saying, oh, I don't know if you were in this class, but I kept saying, now we're going to find our pyramid pose. But instead I kept saying period pose.
Yes, I was
And
there.
I didn't realize it
Yeah.
until like the third or fourth time I've said it. But then I realized it and I was like, why wouldn't I just own the fact that I totally said that? Right.
Yeah. I
So,
mean, well, and to your point, it's like laughter is disarming. It just really kind of pokes fun at stuff that everybody's just kind of worried about. And I'm sure you can pick up that tone in a yoga
oh,
class
yeah.
too. And it's like humor and laughter really kind of signals that everything's okay. It's
Yeah.
fine. And I think this is why we're
Yeah.
trying to bring more laughter into business and
Yeah.
organizations. And it's something that I'm trying to work on too. It's just bringing some more levity to the situation because I am certainly wired to be more serious. And I think being
Yeah.
around, which is why I appreciate the humor in others so much too, because it gives me
Sure.
permission to kind of lighten up and it's okay. And it's hard for me sometimes when people are like, oh, just
Yeah.
dance around. And I'm like, ooh, I don't know. No, I don't know. But kind of releasing those inhibitions. But I'm like, okay,
Yeah.
I might be able to shuffle a little bit or something, but something that I continue to work on too. But it's really, it's refreshing. It's super refreshing. So thank you for being you.
Oh, gosh. Well, thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Sometimes life can be so serious. It can come at you so fast. Gosh, it's hard to know
Yeah.
what to do sometimes but laugh at it. At just the
Right.
absurdity of the timing,
Right.
right? Or the circumstance.
All right, Holly, a closing question for you, or actually two closing questions for you. How do you live a life of truth and intention? What does that mean to you?
First of all, I'm still working on it, right? And I hope to always work
Yeah.
on it.
Aren't we all?
I hope
Right.
it's right. It's not a destination. I think it's very much just a journey. And as I give myself permission to grow and change and evolve, I know that how I view those things or let them in or what I need from those things will also grow and change and evolve. And so for me, though, I think it starts with being aware and acknowledging what you're making a choice about versus what is being chosen for you based on circumstance. And inspiration to me right now has to come in moments. It has to come usually when I'm not expecting it. And I think sometimes that can be
Mm,
even harder to see like, oh, I didn't come to this place and expect to meet this person who has said something really enlightening or inspiring, or I just feel different and good or whatever. I think right now, though, chaos instigator, inspiration instigator is kind of the hat I'm wearing with my kids, right? Building relationships professionally. I think that's a really powerful way to do that in the yoga classes, but it's still a work in progress. I'm still every day having to be conscious about it, having to take stock within it, and then trying to find it in other places that I go.
right. I love what you say about those moments that inspiration comes when you least expect it. Isn't that what it feels like sometimes? Just like these little miracles that happen
It is.
when you're just sort of open to receive that. Yeah, I love that. Well, this might go hand in hand. What does it mean to you to live a consciously inspired life?
I think it I think it means showing up with permission to be imperfect, honest, messy, genuine. I always thought when I grew up, my grandma down the hill, my great grandma and my grandma were very powerful characters, female characters. And I heard a quote once that resonated to me who they were. But over the years, I've kind of modified it a bit. But the quote is, wherever you go, be the soul of that place.
Mm.
And I loved that. But what I realized is that when my grandma died, everyone acted a fool. Like they didn't know how to act without the soul of that place. Like they didn't know how to have it be their own soul. That was the place. Like there was a disconnect. So as an extension of that, I think wherever you go, be the soul of that place, but also nourish the other souls of that place so that they are resilient and adaptable. And so they can go into the world and be messy and confident. And I tell my kids this, and I hope that it is a soundtrack that lives in their brain. And I tell them, you make good choices, be confident, trust your instincts. You make good choices. Look at you, right? To me, that's being the soul of a place, but also nourishing all the others around it so that it's a really incredible place to learn and grow and be authentic and challenge and be messy and be funny and hold still.
I think that's so beautiful and a testament to your desire to leave moments a little better than you found them. And you certainly did here today. So thank you.
Oh,
And it's funny that you mention a reminder to your kids that they're making good choices. And that's such a great tip for me. I have a board right behind me that tells me I am making good choices. And then my youngest daughter comes in and she writes some other things like, Mom, you can do this. And so it encourages them to stay positive and build their own affirmations, encourage me at the same time. But I love that idea of expressing that idea to my kids. Like, you make good choices. You're making good choices. Like, giving them that credit because they are.
yeah.
They really are. I love that. Thank you for that.
And it's not easy. You're welcome.
Oh, it's so not easy. It's so not easy. Yeah. Well, Holli, it's been such a pleasure. Thank you so much for being here. This has filled my soul today. And I know it's filled the souls of our listeners. Where can people find you? If you want them to find you. I don't know. Except for the yoga studio, right? They can find you at the yoga studio. Anywhere else they can find you.
Oh, where they least expect me. No, I'm just kidding. The yoga studio is a great place. Summit Park is a great place in the summers where we do outdoor yoga. Right.
Yeah. So let's talk about that for a second. So Body Alive at Mason. Body Alive Mason on Sundays at 8 or 9:30. Is that right?
Yeah.
You can come in and enjoy a class. And then you're at Kenwood, the Kenwood location, 6 a.m. Fridays. Yeah. I know her schedule is weird.
Friday.
I may or may not stalk her. And then tell us about the Summit Park, because you do that every summer as well.
Yeah. And of course, that's the plan for this summer as well. And every Sunday at 9 a.m., we meet on the Great Lawn in Summit Park. And we move together, rain or shine. We have a pavilion that we can set up under if it is raining, but it tends to be Sunday's a really good reset day and a good day to remember what, the week has ahead of us and how to start it. So I love to work with yogis on Sundays or any day, but particularly Sundays, there's something very special about it. I think it can debunk the Sunday scaries. It can help wire what we need for the week and hopefully beyond the week. But I'm not, I don't have any type of podcasts that I run or, I do some Zoom yoga here and there for people who are needing it and not local. But otherwise, I'm just mostly in my kitchen. That's where you can find me. You find me in my kitchen.
I love it. I love it. Beautiful. Well, thank you, Holli. I appreciate that. So everybody go check out Holli at Summit Park or at Body Alive Mason or Kenwood. And hope to see you there. All right, everybody. Until next time. Bye-bye. That's all for today. Thanks for joining us. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe and leave a review. If you'd like to learn more about Consciously Inspired Minds, you can visit us at consciouslyinspiredminds.com. If these episodes have you wondering how you can design a life uniquely inspired by you, head on over to modelifestylecoaching.com. That's MODE lifestylecoaching.com and schedule a free call. I'd love to learn more about your deepest desires and how we can get you closer to your authentic life vision and impact. Until we connect again, explore what inspires you.